On August 17th, 1997, a team of 6 expert divers ventured into the depths of the four-shark blue hole in the Bahamas. What began as an exciting expedition soon turned into a horrifying nightmare. One life was lost that day in the most tragic of circumstances. Rob Parker was a 35-year-old diver from Bournemouth, England. From an early age, he had a passion for adventure sports and became a familiar figure climbing the cliffs of the Dorset coastline. Rob's hunger for adventure eventually led him to cave diving. In 1983, at just 21 years old, he joined a team exploring the Cueva de la Pena Colorado on the Huautla Plateau in Mexico. This project combined technical skills like cave exploration, rock climbing, scuba diving, and long-range camping beyond sumps. Rob was an enthusiastic and energetic young man, quickly establishing himself as one of the top cave explorers in the country. The four-shark blue hole is a seaside ocean blue hole located inside the barrier reef along the fault line 5 kilometers northwest of Dolly Cay's South Andros in the Bahamas. It is one of the largest caverns in the Bahamas, with an entrance that is a coral-rimmed basin about 33 feet deep. The first 230-foot long, 65-foot wide chamber, known as the Kalik Cavern, extends to a depth of 196 feet. At the far end, a narrow crack at 131 feet deep descends into an unmapped, treacherous passage of unknown depth. Exploring this forbidden territory was strongly advised against, even for expert divers. Rob was traveling to the Bahamas with 5 other divers. His dive partner, Dan Malone, nicknamed Duffer, and Stevie Palmer, the widow of the late Rob Palmer, were among them. They were on tour to make a documentary about the blue holes in honor of Rob Palmer, who had mysteriously died while diving in the Red Sea just 4 months earlier. Rob Parker, with over 1,000 dives logged, was a proficient and experienced cave diver specializing in deep blue holes. For 2 weeks leading up to the filming, Rob and his team had worked tirelessly, diving with compressed air to depths of 60 meters to prepare their bodies. After their grueling 2-week preparation, Rob and Dan decided to take one last dive into the four-shark blue hole before the film crew arrived. This would be their opportunity to push further and explore the forbidden cavern passage. Rob was intent on investigating the rumored treacherous side passage, knowing the film crew would never allow it for safety reasons. If they went in secretly beforehand, no one would ever know. Some support divers caught wind of their plan and said they would join, but remain in the main Kalik cavern and not enter the restriction. Dan Malone was unsure, well aware of the dangers, but didn't want to discourage the driven Rob Parker, so he gave his reluctant okay. On August 17th, around 8 p.m., they timed their dive to coincide with the slack tide, a period of no violent water flow in the narrow, blue hole openings. The plan was to breathe compressed air until 220 feet, then continue to 250. They pushed 300 feet beyond the previously explored limit, surveying the unmapped cave and laying a guideline to mark their path. Finally, they worked their way into the tight, treacherous passage and through to the forbidden cavern. This was everything they'd hoped for. An incredible, unexplored realm. But they knew they had to move quickly before their air ran out or the tides shifted, potentially trapping them inside. As they made their way out, one of the regulators on Dan's tank failed, forcing him to switch to his remaining compressed air supply. The terrifying narcosis rush hit him hard. The narcosis slowly subsided as they continued, but then Dan noticed something wasn't right with Rob. He seemed to be struggling, his kicks slowing. Suddenly, Rob stopped kicking altogether and began sinking rapidly. It took Dan 30 to 40 feet to catch up and stop Rob's downward momentum. In the process, Dan lost both his fins, but saw Rob was still breathing. He towed the semi-conscious Rob back towards the guideline to exit. As they reached the narrow passage again, Rob seemed to regain full consciousness, a miracle in itself. But now they had to navigate this restriction again, with Rob above the line and Dan below, desperately finning to make progress against the powerful currents. Dan made it through to the other side, grabbing the spare air tanks they'd stashed there for decompression. Relieved, he turned back to look for Rob, but his friend was nowhere to be seen. Dan frantically waved his light around, trying to get the attention of the support divers in the main cavern. Finally, Tom Iliff saw him and swam over. Through hand signals, the horrific reality set in. Rob Parker was missing somewhere in that narrow, uncharted passage. Tom responded that there was no way he could attempt a rescue. He was running low on air himself and lacked the skills to navigate that tight restriction safely. Using the decompression tanks would have been toxic at that depth. For the next 3 hours and 20 minutes, Dan underwent decompression on the surface. His mind raced through all the possible scenarios of what could have happened to his friend and dive buddy. The next day, Dan returned with Stevie Palmer and recovery diver Brian Kakich, specialized in retrieving drowned bodies. They searched for Rob, eventually making the grim discovery. At a depth of 149 feet, they found Rob Parker's body, head down, facing back into that ill-fated passage he'd been so determined to explore. However, timing the recovery with the tides meant they could not retrieve him immediately. It took 2 more agonizing days before a team could remove Rob's gear and carefully extract his body back through that narrow, 175-foot ordeal of a passageway. No autopsy was performed, but the Coast Guard investigator believed the most likely cause was nitrogen narcosis, having disoriented Rob, made him become trapped, and ultimately drown in that treacherous underwater tomb. Rob Parker's death was a devastating tragedy that shocked the close-knit cave diving community. An extremely experienced diver with over 1,000 logged caves and deep dives, Rob had transitioned his focus in recent years to filmmaking and other adventures like rock climbing. Some wondered whether the lack of consistently pushing his limits may have made him inadvertently complacent about the incredible risks he took that fateful day in the four-shark blue hole. What if he had resisted exploring that forbidden passage, sticking to the team's original plan? What if Dan or the support divers had somehow been able to reach him in time? These haunting what-ifs linger unanswerable, while Rob Parker's overconfidence and insatiable thirst for the unknown ultimately claimed his life. It was that same daring, adventurous spirit that made him such an extraordinary explorer. From an early age, Rob seemed driven by a relentless hunger to push boundaries, charting paths where few dared to venture. His passion for cave diving epitomized that fearless mindset, willingly plunging into the inky blackness of unmapped depths, both awed and undaunted by nature's hazardous marvels. It was a zeal that inspired awe among his peers and propelled Rob to the upper echelons of his craft. Yet that fateful dive into the four-shark blue hole served as a stark reminder that even world-class skills, experience, and preparation cannot entirely tame the perilous, unforgiving nature of cave diving. The underwater labyrinth cares not for human ambition, confronting explorers with the harsh realities of a single, ill-timed mistake's potentially mortal consequences. Rob's tragic end, trapped in that seamless trespassing endeavor, highlights the humbling line between brave and reckless that every expert must walk. His death stands as a sobering caution about the axiom that cutting-edge pursuits demand nothing less than consummate precision alongside that searching spirit. For in the silent, sublime depths, one careless overreach can swiftly become an inescapable, final reckoning. If you found Rob Parker's story interesting and want to learn more incredible tales of adventure and survival, be sure to subscribe and catch my next video. Until then, let this serve as a sobering caution to always respect the risks and limits, even when daring to plumb the depths of the unknown. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and let me know your thoughts on Rob Parker's fate in the comments below. I'm always eager to hear your perspectives. Thanks for watching, and remember, fortune favors the bold, but the depths demand ultimate respect. I'll see you next time.